It is John Pollock and Wai Ting coming at you on Saturday night, February the 1st, following the 2025 edition of the Royal Rumble, a show that Wai Ting just could not believe. It's got to have 5 matches. It needs 5 matches. They could do a 1 match show, and I'm pretty sure they'd hit their 4-hour window if they needed to, okay?
We are approaching that
Never
point.
underestimate this company and what they can use to fill up a window of time. 4 matches in 4 hours and 30 minutes.
4.5 hours for 4 matches. I mean,
there is a giant asterisk with
yeah.
matches,
To be fair,
so.
2 of those matches ended up going over an hour. But yeah, I really did think that they would add an extra one. But clearly, there was more than enough content to fill the window.
Yeah, someone can fact check me, but off the top of my head, and I'm doing this fresh off the top of my head, my guess is that men's Rumble match, which clocked in at 80 minutes, at bare minimum, has to be one of, if not the longest matches in WWE history. I don't think there's ever been a Rumble that has gone that length of time.
Really? Wow.
Double check me on that, but it would not surprise me if that would technically be the longest match in perhaps company history.
Interesting because for me at least, John, I didn't feel that match dragged at all. I was captivated for the entire thing.
Well, going into it, they loaded it up so well, and they also back-ended the Rumble with all the heavyweights for that kind of final 15 slots. So you just had star after star after star, and it really loaded up that second portion. And yeah, we will get into that because tonight had, I would say, a pretty expected winner in the women's match and a pretty unexpected winner in the men's match. And we will contrast that. Also tonight, we are going to be joined a little later on by Brandon Thurston. He is going to be watching the press conference. He is not in Indianapolis, but we'll be watching the press conference afterward. He's going to join us for a short segment because as much as everyone is in the Royal Rumble fanfare, the big story of the weekend is the amended complaint filed by Janel Grant and her legal team, which we touched upon on Friday night, literally 45 minutes after the amended complaint had dropped. Since then, I've read the entire 101-page complaint. We'll talk with Brandon a bit about that. What, if at all, it is said about it during the press conference, during the media availability, and we'll also talk with Brandon a bit because he did write a pretty concise rundown of the key points from those 101 pages up at postwrestling.com. But before we dive into the entire Royal Rumble event itself, we do want to do some housekeeping about what is happening at Post Wrestling over the month of February, because back at the beginning of the year, we made some adjustments to the way we are doing our Monday, Wednesday, Friday shows covering Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown, where we go live each of those nights for members at postwrestlingcafe.com. That's what your $6 per month gets you. One of many bonus features is live access to that show, as well as XL versions of the show, which contain the news of the day and your feedback and questions. The show review is the portion that you get free regardless of your subscription. But coming up in February, the XL format continues. We also have 2 editions of Rewind Away beginning this week with a look at Bret Hart's heel run in the WWF that was planted in 96 and really prospers in 1997. Kind of our curated playlist culminates with the formation of the Hart Foundation in the first quarter of 1997. So we will be extensively looking into that particular run of Bret Hart's career, a very fondly remembered one. And then a couple weeks after that, it is NXT TakeOver New Orleans from 2018, one of the highly regarded NXT takeovers of its era. So that should be a lot of fun as well. We will have coverage on the cafe of AEW Grand Slam Australia, whether it ends at midnight, 2 a.m., 6 a.m. Wai Ting and Kate from Montreal will be there to cover that show. We will have a New Beginning in Osaka show with Karen Peterson and Bruce Lord, as well as a Ask Away mailbag show as well. I'm just blabbering on here, but we will also be doing an SNL 50 special with myself and Braden Harrington going over the 3-hour Saturday Night Live special that's coming up in a couple of weeks. If that's your jam, Braden and I are going to be doing, we're going to put together our own lists of some of the best of Saturday Night Live over its 50 years as they have this 3-hour special.
I'm looking forward to it. It's our little space where we can talk about things maybe beyond maybe the sort of broader scope of like WWE and AEW coverage, which is mainly what we can do on the free feed. We'll also have, of course, the return of MCU later, talking about Daredevil, talking about Captain America, Brave New World. So the Post Wrestling Cafe is the place to support post wrestling if you enjoy any of our work, and for that we try to do our best to reward the people that keep this thing afloat. So thank you to everybody who signed up for January. It was one of our best months in terms of our Patreon growth. So thank you guys for being here, especially for those of you annual subscribers who are going to be here for the whole year. We're going to do our best to make your subscription worthwhile.
So we hope you check it out if you enjoy the changes. We also appreciate any feedback, positive, constructive criticism, where it's always a work in progress as we are trying to deliver as best we can. And Monday night, we will announce the winners of the Royal Rumble pool that we have held each and every year. Chris Engler will deliver the results to us, and we will find out if anyone chose Jey Uso to win the Royal Rumble.
Very fascinating to see.
All right, with that said, we're going to dive into the Royal Rumble from Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis, Indiana. Without any exaggeration, one of the most successful shows in WWE's history. And the last number WrestleTix reported right before the show was 67,590 tickets distributed. On the broadcast, they did not give a number, but they claimed over 70,000. This would put this WrestleMania, if the paid figure is in the ballpark of what WrestleTix had, this is going to be right there with some of the biggest WrestleManias. This would not be the biggest attendance in company history, but it's certainly in that stratosphere below your SummerSlam 92 and WrestleMania at AT&T Stadium. They did state on the broadcast it's the third largest gate in WWE history. The only larger gates, according to the broadcast, was night 1 and 2 of WrestleMania last year, which were gates of 17.7 million for night 1 and 18.4 for night 2. So, we had estimated that this is probably going to be north of 12 or 13 million dollars. We'll see if they release a gate figure, but unfortunately we did not get our favorite announcement for the audience to all applaud, that this is the third biggest gate in history. Yes.
This year's Mania is in a...
this year's Mania will beat tonight's. I feel the 2 nights in Vegas, I think, will be company records. That would be...
in terms of gate or gate and attendance?
Gate. They're not going to be... I don't think Allegiant Stadium can hold this. I mean, both nights are around 44,000, and that will grow, but I don't think they will top this. This will be the most... Unless there is something unforeseen this year, this should be the biggest attendance of the year for WWE and probably for any company.
For the NFL, Allegiant Stadium's capacity is 65,000, expandable to 71,000.
Yeah, they're not going to be able to fit that for a wrestling setup. But for the gate, I feel pretty confident they will beat last year's figures. The countdown special, there was not much. This was my just brief skim through the 2 hours, doing this in about 2 minutes time. The only thing I caught on this was Gunther being interviewed by Kathy Kelly. Gunther, obviously you will be defending your world championship. I guess you will have a close eye on tonight's Royal Rumble. And Gunther says, "No, I will not have a close eye on tonight's match because it doesn't matter. The winner will pick Cody, who is the much easier opponent to beat. Also, I hold the record for the longest time in the Rumble, so thank you for doing your research." And that was it. Just chef's kiss promo from Gunther, making this entire 2 hour kickoff worth the time.
Interesting, and especially interesting with those words, because I don't know if the winner of the Rumble will be choosing Cody.
We will discuss that afterwards. Bully Ray was on the panel. The man seemed exceptionally happy. And Big E brought up the fact that the one person who was kicked out of the 3D is Chris Sabin to tee up the 2 out of 3 falls match. And that is a true statement. They did that in TNA.
The only person ever
yes.
to kick out of a 3D? That's true? Wow. That's fascinating. What a pull.
Yes. There was a history of Royal Rumble piece voiced by Tom Rinaldi. If you want to compare, postwrestlingcafe.com to check out that, or postwrestling.com. It is available for everyone. And then Lanny Gardner, country singer, sang the national anthem. And those were your 2 hours to get you geared up. So if you just wanted to set aside your whole life for the Royal Rumble today. Took it upon you to give 6+ hours. So we had the superstar arrivals sponsored by Wingstop, and in terms of my my visuals of the various advertisers we had on this way, we had Intuit, TurboTax, Slim Jim, and on the canvas we had Cricket 5G, Riyadh Season, and Xfinity. No real American beer on this particular canvas tonight.
Interesting.
Yes. But then, there to open up the show, Alicia Taylor introduces corporate officer number 3, and out she comes. It is Stephanie McMahon to talk about the WWE growing because of you, the biggest Royal Rumble in history, and welcomes everyone as Pyro goes off, and we get an opening voiced by Pat McAfee, who even Pat McAfee made the reference later in the broadcast that I think there's been way too much of me already on this show, and there will be a lot of Pat McAfee. And to be fair, I think that he is somebody that they, being in Indianapolis, they really leaned in on Pat McAfee, and I think that he was somewhat very instrumental to the promotion of this show. That certainly did not hurt the fact that you had, Pat McAfee attached to all of this.
Cole deliberately gave him credit for being the reason why this show was happening in Indianapolis.
I'd give the Indiana Sports Corp a little bit of credit for this, as they have an 8-year deal with the company. So I mean, they are contractually bound to deliver some of these events.
Sure. That too.
Stephanie continues to have this really odd role/non-role. There is no apparent title that she has, but it's like she's doing interviews on behalf of the company. She's on SmackDown. She's opening up WrestleMania. She's opening up the Royal Rumble. It's but she makes it very clear she has not gone back yet to the company.
Right. Not in an executive role, but clearly she's still some form of spokesperson. It almost feels like she's more of a figurehead role now, like maybe similar to, I don't know what Carrie Silkin might have been for in Ring of Honor, somebody who's attached in name to the legacy of the show, and certainly still attached very much as the spouse of, their chief creative officer.
Carrie Silkin of WWE.
Stephanie McMahon, yeah, you think of the same.
Yeah.
I mean,
same theme song, by the way. If you ever went to the Frontier Fieldhouse before the dark matches,
sure,
you would have heard Lil' Kim introducing Carrie.
Yeah, I imagine they didn't even mention the ESPN show as part of this little introduction, did they? Am I mistaken?
Unless it was on the countdown, there was no mention of it here. But they did on SmackDown.
But there's a clear effort to, I don't know if you want to say rehabilitate her image, but certainly like her name being what it is and her association with her father, or just even like at least
she is the only McMahon that is going to be acknowledged and present on programming. Like, she is the link to the McMahon name now.
And I'm sure there's some want from either the people that's currently involved or maybe herself or whomever to want to separate her from what her father is accused of doing. And maybe this is just a continued sort of like, hey, showing everybody this person's, you can still cheer this person. She's got nothing to do with the other guy.
Thank you, Vince. Thank you, Vince.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to kind of scrub that one. Maybe it'll just be Stephanie Levesque at one point. We're just going to get a name change randomly. Or just Stephanie. We'll do the old WWE trick. Just eliminate the last name. So the announcers for the night, Michael Cole, Wade Barrett, and Pat McAfee. And
so, I mean, to me, I do think it's significant the lack of Corey Graves on these shows, both on Saturday night's main event and also this one.
Well, I mean, this is a main roster show. These are your main roster broadcasters. And
yeah, but Graves, I feel, was that 1B to Michael Cole's 1A for the entire duration.
They were the pay-per-view team, and I think though for this, like, even you throw aside the tweets and such, like, it does make a bit more sense that you are having your Raw and SmackDown representatives rather than this transplant that is now on your NXT broadcast.
Yeah, I feel like that would be like an appropriate excuse. I still feel like if those tweets had not occurred, I think you would have had Graves here. But that's just me guessing.
Yeah, it will be the test is going to be when Pat McAfee has to go back to do college football and we get the musical chairs. And if Corey is still on NXT when that adjustment happens, then there's definitely some weight to that this is, you would view that in terms of a punishment.
We'll see.
We're months away from that. The Women's Royal Rumble is opening up the show, and we'll just go into things here, and we'll talk about some of the highlights. Starting things off are Io Sky and Liv Morgan. And before we get into the match proper, what did you think about the graphical handling of, like, this was as though you were watching SportsCenter throughout these matches. They went very heavy on stats, on graphics, on certainly this is a match that lends itself to this type of thing, and constant updates on the amount of eliminations, what's the next entrant, who's
still active.
Exactly. All of this. Was it a good balance? Was it too much? What did you think about the usage of the ticker?
I thought it was fantastic. Yeah, a great enhancement of, I think, what, in speaking about the odds for this thing, we spoke of like this.
Why didn't we get the odds? This would have been perfect for this, wouldn't it?
It would have been, actually. Maybe at some point they will talk about betting odds for the Rumble. But I mean, it is in many ways the most sports-like event, or at least like the type of match that, or event that's where sports statistics are most applicable. And I think having this sort of ticker is sort of a great way to, again, enhance that sort of feeling. Certainly as a way to introduce new audiences who might not have seen every single Royal Rumble up until this point, to introduce them and to guide them along with the concept. Even as something as simple as like, telling you who's still in the match. What are the names of the people that are still in the match? I think that's incredibly effective. I really liked it.
I like the introduction of all of this. I think like this is where the Rumble, like that's where people get into this stuff, is just the length of how long people are in and a way to keep track of it. And I thought it was like pretty well done. Mm-hmm. Io Sky and Liv Morgan started off the match with they noted that Liv Morgan, the runner-up the last 2 years. And so this was interesting, was the setup for this was that Raquel was going to be the insurance policy for Liv Morgan. And then Raquel does not come in until way late in the match, but Liv ends up lasting. So they did get to at least semi-pay off that story. But I thought these two would be more linked throughout the match than having them kind of at bookends of the match. Roxanne Perez was third and ends up going the longest of anyone. And Michael Cole notes that this is her third Royal Rumble match, but the graphic lists it as her second. Point to Michael Cole, who was correct. And then, so she is in this match for pretty much the entire duration. So it was a big focus on Roxanne Perez throughout. Not a big focus was Lyra Valkyria, who came in. I will state this. It was certainly, for me, an issue in the women's match, and to a degree in the men's match, but not as pronounced. There had to have been more than a dozen themes that played. That way, I could not possibly connect the theme with the person that was about to come out. Some of these songs are just totally random to me. Maybe it's a me thing, but I don't think it is.
No, it's not. I mean, I think that's been one of the main criticisms of the modern era of music by Def Rebel.
There were like stars coming out and they weren't getting these. I mean, they were like, your mid-card level. No one was getting these pops because I think for many of them, it's like they don't hear these songs too often, or they're just not identifiable with the performer. You're
at the point now where even talents themselves are criticizing. Like Bailey on a recent stream this weekend was pretty sarcastic about her enthusiasm for her own theme song when it played during an appearance. So it's one of the maybe sore spots from a fan perspective of the modern era of WWE that for whatever reason they have yet to really address.
I thought it was very pronounced in both matches, just like the lack of pop some of these got. And it was the pop would come, but it would be delayed once they saw who it was. Lyra had a bit of a wardrobe malfunction here because the strap on her top came undone and she had to like retreat out of the shot to get this fixed.
I thought it was really good of Liv Morgan if it was something that she did instinctively on her own, recognizing this to, maybe end Lyra's run a bit early to kick her, attack her and let her rest in the corner to sort this thing out.
Yeah, I mean, if Wade Barrett hadn't have called it out, you wouldn't have even noticed anything. Chelsea was fifth, and she ended up being like the cult favorite in this whole match, to the point that I was thinking if there's a babyface that's eliminating her, they are going to just destroy them. But they actually, I think had this pretty well thought out, or at least what was mapped out was not going to create that because, yeah, Chelsea Green was many people's like favorite in terms of this Indianapolis crowd because in she comes as the heel and she just gets beaten on 4-on-1 and the whole crowd is booing them going after Chelsea. BFAB is in next, and everyone's got a stat attached to them, and it really does tell you how involved they are. Her stat was recently formed tag team with Meechin. 7th was the Pitbull, Ivy Nile. We'd have multiple Pitbulls on this show. And Pat just notes that he watched American Gladiators growing up. Ivy Nile reminds me of that. And Ivy Nile does. And she came in and delivered Germans, including a double version to Green and Perez. Zoe Stark is 8th. And we have no eliminations yet. And Barrett says that it has been a marathon for Io Sky, who is in 1st. We are 13 minutes into this match of this marathon. Lash Legend is our next NXT performer to join the fray. And Niall tried for something with Lash and just got caught and then had to be swung into other people before a power bomb. And we get
the spot was like, swinging Ivy now like a pendulum. And something was a little bit messed up there, unfortunately. But they ended up completing it anyway.
Green ends up lifting and throwing out BFAB for the first elimination. And this gets a big pop because it's Chelsea Green throwing her out. And we are followed by Bianca Belair, who I thought had this very cool spot where one after the other, they all just got piled up in the corner and she just continually punched them, moonsault. The other one would get piled in and we got like 4 of them in the corner. Shayna Baszler is in 11th. And we saw Zoe here slip on a springboard, but then regained her balance to finish a lariat. Bayley is 12th, and she is going to try and join Hogan, Austin, Michaels, and Cody as back-to-back winners. And we get a showdown with Bayley and Io, but then Stark and Baszler break them up. And to complete the Pure Fusion Collective, it's Sonya Deville in 13th as they work together. Maxine Dupree is in 14th, and I was just curious at this point to look up. This was Maxine Dupree's first match since November the 3rd, which was also a battle royal on Raw. So it's like 3 months she has gone without a match. And and you wouldn't even think about that because you see her most weeks on TV, but she's just not wrestling.
A lot, you could say that probably for a lot of the women on this roster. There's a limited amount of airtime for the women, and she's just not really a priority right now.
So she tries for the Caterpillar, and PFC stop her. And then we get Bayley fighting Pure Fusion Collective. Maxine does a German onto Niall, and the Caterpillar hits, and she sends out Niall with a kick, but then Pure Fusion Collective lift and dump Maxine out. 15th was Naomi, who comes in. And did you notice, Way, that Bianca Belair and Naomi also wearing green outfits, and there in the ring was United States champion Chelsea Green.
Mind games.
Very
green? Are you sure they were wearing green, not jade?
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly your color palette might be able to differentiate this. Belair and Naomi dump out Stark. Then Sky sends Deville out. Bayley eliminated Deville. So pretty much Pure Fusion Collective all gone in succession. Then we had Jada Parker, who is in, and again, Chelsea Green, they're booing when they go after Chelsea, and there was even a Chelsea chant here. Piper Niven comes in 17th, so Green is hiding behind Niven, and Naomi...
So the spot was really funny with Chelsea, I think we should mention. So it's Parker and Lash seeing each other. They're kind of, I guess, like recognizing each other from NXT. And then here Bianca and Naomi, like recognizing, like it's, hey, like, we're strong black women. We're in the Rumble, and in walks Chelsea Green to like join the party, and she gets beaten down. Now, what was fascinating was the crowd started booing these baby faces for attacking Chelsea Green because Chelsea was so over, which could have ended up really bad for the heels. But thankfully, like it wasn't such a sustained moment that I think it reflected so poorly on them. But number one, I thought it was significant because yes, Chelsea is incredibly over. Number two, I almost felt like it was a bit of like, sort of like, racial humor that I don't necessarily think the WWE is attempting all too often. I thought Chelsea was perfect for it, and I thought it was a pretty funny spot.
Well, Paul Levesque doesn't see color.
Right, of course.
17th was Piper Niven, as we mentioned. So she is hiding behind Piper. Green is hiding behind Niven. And then Naomi sends Green onto the edge, and Piper runs at Naomi, but accidentally knocks out Chelsea, who has a fit yelling at Piper. So it was a way to get Chelsea out, and it was also not to the detriment of a babyface that would have just felt the scorn of this crowd that wanted Chelsea Green to win at all cost.
It would have been disastrous if it was a Bianca or Naomi doing
This
that
was Daniel
elimination.
Bryan. It was Chelsea
Oh, yeah.
Green.
Yeah. So it just continues to tell you that this is a crowd that really wants to cheer for Chelsea Green.
That Pacific Northwest, British Columbia area. I mean, they breed baby faces there for these crowds. 18th was Natalia, followed by Happy Birthday Mom, Jordan Grace. Yeah, this was the year. If you want to get into Paul Levesque's playbook, folks, it's just going online with your prior commitments or with your baby or any other reason that you're going to be busy that weekend.
I don't doubt that it might actually be her mom's 50th birthday.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
So-
I'm sure she went to that and she managed to come here. She's flying right back there afterward.
I don't even know about that. Maybe, I mean, I could see her leaving her mom's birthday, or maybe not even visiting her mom on her 50th birthday in order to do this. But either way, well played. I mean, people were rumoring her heavily anyway. So to at least play with some of those expectations, I thought it was completely fair for a professional wrestler.
WWE, they aren't too concerned about online reporting or discussions.
Not anymore.
It doesn't get under their skin.
Well, it's part of their game. And in fact, it was directly called. It's part of the experience of being a modern wrestling fan to engage online, and I think they play with that.
So Pat McAfee thanks TNA for introducing Jordan Grace to the world. I think with it being her birthday, her mother deserves credit for introducing her to this world. And we get a hip attack from Grace eliminating Jada Parker, and then she even does the mock celebration of Jada. Grace then lifts up Piper Niven on her shoulders. No joke, this was one of the biggest pops on the entire show, was her lifting Piper Niven up for a Death Valley driver. And in a recreation of the same spot last year, Grace and Naomi hug in the center, and Belair yanks Naomi off and can't believe. This is like two fighters high-fiving at the beginning of round 3, and you're wasting time.
I love this little bit of interaction between these two, and especially with Belair coming in and stopping it. I mean, this is something, of course, they did last year, but then having Belair introduced into the mix, it's sort of a new friends versus old friends situation. Just because maybe I'm your friend from before doesn't mean I have to be cool with your friends from today. So I thought it was a nice little setup. And with the reaction that Jordan Grace received in this particular match, she got one of the bigger reactions, period, upon walkout. Just not even to mention the Piper Niven spot, which was maybe my favorite spot of the entire match. I do wonder if they were considering her entering NXT first. I wonder if they would reconsider that and just put her right into the main roster, seeing how well she's been received here.
Well, there's a spot later that I feel NXT is the likely destination, but we will see. She got a great reaction here, and you could certainly make the opposing argument. 20th is Michin, and then number 21 is the returning Alexa Bliss. Wow. And she comes out, has not appeared since the 2023 Royal Rumble, and she is accompanied by Lily, which they already had merchandise ready to sell.
This reaction was amazing, and so amazing and so expected to be amazing that the announcers were told to just lay off and let the moment speak for itself.
Oh, but Michael Cole didn't lay off for too long.
Well, we got at least a good 15 seconds, and it was a marvelous 15 seconds here.
It was a huge pop that Alexa Bliss received, and then this wasn't supposed to happen. The internet said that she wasn't coming back. Michael Cole, don't read the dirt sheets. Well, other than the fact that now this was reported previously that there had been some contract impasse, which I cannot speak to whether there was or was not. But I can also tell you that this afternoon, Mike Johnson flat out reported that she was backstage and expected in the Royal Rumble. So they did.
Both of those things could be true.
And both could be true, and it's regardless. But yes. Don't ever think that WWE is not above just having their fun online.
Sure. I mean, again, it's part of, to me, the fun of professional wrestling, playing with expectations, playing with reality, and that might include working the dirt sheets. Yeah.
Number 22 is Zelina Vega, and that follows Candice LeRae, Stephanie Vaquer, who is out next, and they bring up Bayley's bad knees as she takes a dragon screw, and then 25, the woman inducted into the Richmond Hill Sports Hall of Fame on Thursday night, Trish Stratus, who comes out with a nod to her TNA gimmick from 2000, not Total Nonstop Action. Comes out, look great, and a multiple Hall of Famer now.
It's pretty, yes, yeah, the Richmond Hill one, primarily. To my surprise, this is like only Trish's second Rumble, because I feel like she's been so off.
She was in the first
active.
one, right?
She was in 2018 and hasn't been in one since. But it's amazing to me that she, as somebody who I think like is widely considered to be almost a pioneer of this sort of current movement of women's wrestling in the WWE, she still fits in like really well among the current crop,
Yeah, it was interesting to see, like, this would be, like, for the men's and women's match, like, it does feel that under, the Paul Levesque's booking of this match, it's not so much bringing out, like, random blast from the past from the mid-90s or just, like, a random cameo. It seems to be more so, if we're going to do any surprises, it's going to be from NXT, it'll be from TNA, or it'll be a special case like a Trish Stratus, who's not just your random legend. It's someone that's kind of been incorporated into storylines and one that you could pick something up with. Like they teased the Tiffany Stratton stuff last summer when she was there at Money in the Bank. So like it doesn't feel like those like one-off cameos seem to be like you have such a big roster now, and it just seems like let's focus on people we're building rather than just the random
the Rumble is prime real estate to expose somebody, and that might be, you do need the occasional nostalgic pop, which I thought they delivered here. But
well, they do them now, but it's the people in the crowd, like Ron Simmons and The Godfather. It's like those people don't need to be in Rumbles. Like you can do that, and you leave the surprises for people that you just see. I think having more value in, or that you can do more with, that rather than just a one night pop, for instance. So Trish is in, and followed by Raquel Rodriguez. Liv has now been in over 51 minutes after starting the match with Io Sky. And Natalya is sent to the edge by Raquel, and a code breaker by Liv eliminates her. Then they do the same deal with Alexa Bliss, where she's out from a code breaker. The crowd was sad to see Alexa go. 27th is Charlotte Flair. She comes out, and you know what? I think she's been watching these Jey Uso entrances and said, you know what? I think I can have a longer entrance than that. And I will say, part of the reason these matches were so long is this walk to the ring was gigantic. And if you weren't like sprinting, it was a long entrance. And you add these all up, like no wonder these matches went so long. Like this was such a long walk that they had to make. And for Charlotte, she had pyro, she had this big outfit, she's stopping. Like this was like a 4 or 5 minute entrance it took before she started.
Oh, way longer than an actual interval. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was just, they had such a long distance to go, and that's, 60 entrances. That tacks up a lot of time, but this is our first official match since December of 2023, and she's now working with a left knee brace on, and she's just firing off chops, boots Michin out, then eliminates Niven. Number 28 is NXT Women's Champion Julia, and her and Io start going at it. Io and Liv then surpass the hour mark, while Roxanne Perez is right behind them, as she's been in. So you have the first three people still here by number 28, and then Julia eliminates Jordan Grace. And that was my thought, that this gets followed up on in some form or fashion, but remains to be seen. Number 29, Nia Jax, who comes in. Vega is on the edge, and before Jax even enters the ring, yanks Vega to the floor, and that sets the record for women and most eliminations at 21. So Jax and Trish square off, and Nia just towers over Trish Stratus, and Trish manages to toss out Candice LeRae, and then Trish is on the edge, and Candice grabs Trish by the leg, and it leads to Nia Jax knocking Stratus out. So a short involvement with Trish, but she got to work with a lot of the various women for the 10 minutes or so she was in this. And then number 30 is the returning Nikki Bella that had been speculated upon, her first match since the 2022 Royal Rumble, and everyone circles around Nia Jax and they go to eliminate her and she drops everybody. Then Nia, after Nia fights them off, Nikki starts doing push-ups. Then Roxanne Perez, she starts doing push-ups in their Mark Hominick-off. And then there's a big pileup on the edge, and we just get like the giant Mack truck spot where Nia tosses and knocks like 5 people off the apron, including Io, Vicaire, Raquel Rodriguez, Belair, and Naomi. So some big names that are gone in this crazy spot. And then Nia eliminates Liv Morgan. So our 2 endurance champions here are gone in Io and Liv Morgan. And that brings us down to Roxanne Perez, Julia, and Flair fighting on the edge. And Perez rams Julia, sends her out. Bayley is limping around. Nikki then misses Jax and knocks Bayley out. Jax eliminates Nikki. And we are down to the final 3 of Nia, Charlotte, and Perez. Perez attacks Flair's knee. She's surpassed 67 minutes. And then Jax lifts Perez over the top. And Flair dumps Jax out before booting Perez and winning the match in 70 minutes and 20 seconds. Of note here, Nia Jax had 9 eliminations. Roxanne lasted the longest at 67 minutes and 47 seconds. And Charlotte Flair is your winner.
Mm-hmm. So for this Rumble, I mean, do we remember it for the match it was or for the entirety of the cycle leading up to the match? Because the build to it I thought was awful going in, but maybe they were confident enough that this was going to be a match made by the match itself with the surprises that they had. And I think I expected as much, it ended up to me being a very satisfying and enjoyable match. But I don't think that necessarily excuses the lack of attention that they put into the build itself. So I hope that they're able to do better next year. But man, these Rumbles are always incredibly well coordinated with very captivating moments through the entire hour. And we watch a lot of Rumble matches or Battle Royals these days across various promotions. There's always something very special about the Rumble, and it's because of the planning that's involved in it. The amount of moments that they're able to craft, the amount of feuds that they're able to shoot off of through every interaction is what to me separates a good Royal Rumble from like maybe a New Japan Rambo that often just kind of feels like a collection of entrances and just guys just like doing random shit. This didn't really feel like that to me. It felt like every there were significant pairings and significant moments throughout the entire thing, but enough surprises to keep your attention throughout the 70 minutes. Great promotion of your current NXT women's roster, and a great debut for Jordynne Grace. That to me was one of the big standouts. One of the big spots of the match was that DVD to Piper Niven. I think another standout coming out of this match is Chelsea Green and the amount of crowd response to her, wanted to cheer for her as a babyface. Two surprises I think you can call, or at least legend surprises in Trish and Nikki Bella, and of course you had Jordynne Grace, which I do think maybe to many people you would consider one as well. But it was a return of Alexa Bliss that I thought created one of the best moments in the entire match. I think one of the better surprise entrance in recent Rumble history for me. Again, that reaction was outstanding. And then also some attention put into some of your mid-card acts as well to have them potentially build to feuds on Raw or SmackDown with. That includes Lyra Valkyria and Ivy Nile. They've been working something, and this kind of put a bit more heat towards that IC title feud. Chelsea and B-Fab, on a much lower scale, but I mean, they continue whatever they're working on for the U.S. Championship. I wonder if they would pair Alexa Bliss with Liv Morgan, with Liv being the one to eliminate her. So I'm curious to see where Alexa Bliss ends up, what brand she ends up with. She's coming out with Lily. The expectation is for her to be attached to the Wyatt Six. That would indicate a SmackDown move, so we'll see what happens there. And then my other question is whether or not Nikki Bella and Trish stick around and what they have in store for them.
Yeah, I think you would lean more Nikki. You would think. there will be more with. I guess Trish is more of a question mark. It's possible. It's possible you could fit her in for something leading into Mania or even coming out of Mania. I wouldn't say I was as high on the match as you were, and a big portion of that I think was sort of just the lead up to this match, and I found like the first half of the Rumble, it was like you had the stories of Io and Liv Morgan and Roxanne Perez kind of outlasting and continuing and just doing kind of the Iron Woman aspect with them. I thought, like most Rumbles, I thought it was like the final third that they really got things going. You got some of the bigger names in. I did like a lot of the NXT integration. I would say like they did a really good job with that. I think Lash Legend is someone you can see a lot of her improvements. And I think that, and her and Jada Parker, I would say, are very high on people's lists on NXT as well. So I like that aspect to it. I thought it was a good Rumble. I wouldn't go so far as to say it's my favorite way. Good, not great.
Not your favorite.
Not my favorite.
Yeah.
Charlotte winning, I guess we should also mention the fact, I guess the surprise people were expecting that wasn't delivered upon was Becky Lynch. I guess that was one that was discussed. And I guess you can certainly make the argument that to bring back Becky, if she's not winning, is it the best place to put her in? You could go back and forth on that one of like what the value would be.
I think the risk with that would have been how it might have hurt number 30, because I think the crowd expectation at number 30 would have been potentially a Becky Lynch. But by having Nikki Bella, who like herself, I think is like a fan-friendly type of, nostalgic return, that sort of like negated that. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see like when Becky might make her return and in what capacity. I also think it was notable here because it seemed very clear to me that Charlotte was a babyface in this match, and that would indicate that she would be challenging a heel champion in potentially Tiffany Stratton. And I do have my doubts, because I do think Charlotte is somebody who's much better as a heel, and certainly like with the way the character was portrayed in those vignettes, felt heel, like classic Ric Flair heel to me. And it just seems to me like there were a lot of bigger babyface that the crowd would rather be cheering for than a Charlotte Flair. So I like even a Tiffany Stratton, I wonder if they're risking fighting against the crowd and potentially leading us to a double turn with a situation, with people cheering Stratton over Flair. I just wonder if the best way to promote Charlotte at this point is as a babyface.
They showed various legends throughout the night. We had the Godfather, who I think he was going for, his. He was already celebrating WrestleMania Sunday. It looked like on screen. Mickie James, Kurt Angle, who was with his daughter and had his gold medal and his 1995 World Championship medal that he has never left his house with. And then we had Notre Dame head coach Marcus Freeman and AEW All-In veteran Stephen Amell, who was also shown. To the 2 out of 3 falls match, DIY and the Motor City Machine Guns. You know what, Way? Sometimes, the Motor City Machine Guns are still a relatively new team. So the stat team, they really had to stay up all night. And the stats we got for the Motor City Machine Guns on their graphic was held the tag titles for 42 days before losing them, are currently on a 3-match winning streak.
Mm-hmm.
That
what would you rather have had? The last person to kick out of the 3D?
That actually would have been more impressive than we held the titles for a shade over 4 weeks.
They don't have that much history in this company, I guess.
No, they don't. They did bring up the injury to JD McDonough and that he'll be out for a bit. Yes, and they did note punctured lung and broken ribs. So like most 2 out of 3 falls matches, we kind of just rushed through these first 2 falls. The first was Shelley not realizing Ciampa was the legal man, so he's blindsided by a jumping knee, and they pinned Shelley pretty quickly, like within minutes. And then Motor City Machine Guns are in. I thought DIY, they had some tremendous double team work here. And referee Ryan Tran gets distracted with Ciampa. They hit the Shatter Machine, which was not called as such. That led to a 2 count. Saban's in, Tornado DDT, Skull and Bones, and they pin Gargano. So, I mean, this was under 10 minutes just to get to these two. So we just go into the 3rd fall.
They did like a fake hot tag situation.
Yeah. That was for the first fall.
The first one, yeah.
Yeah. Project Ciampa is hit onto Saban for a near fall, and then the Machine Guns go for Made in Detroit, but Gargano tackles Saban on top to break up the cover, And then we get the double team maneuver, and we get the call. The facial connected.
Yeah, so clearly, like, they've been briefed on what to call that move. It's the facial.
How do you come up with this? Like, this has to be the worst name for a move I can recall.
Is it worse than long back attack, or I don't
Yes,
know,
yes.
five knuckle shuffle?
What's your specialty? What's your specialty double team maneuver? The facial.
I mean, listen, they clearly they enjoyed it. Yet, like, Made in Detroit is never called. Like, it's never really acknowledged.
They didn't call it
as
Made
such.
in Detroit tonight, and I don't think they've ever called it in WWE. So they go for Skull and Bones when all of a sudden Montez Ford jumps onto the apron, distracting the referee as Dawkins attacks Shelley with a crutch. Gargano sends Sabin into the post, and then they hit meet in the middle with Ciampa pinning Shelley. And then the Street Profits attack DIY. And we have to have Michael Cole read these two men's minds to explain that the reason they attacked the Motor City Machine Guns is because they are out for revenge on DIY, and only they want to beat DIY for the tag title. So you are not supposed to view them as heels. They're just baby faces out for vengeance. And this tag division just continues to perplex me at times.
Yeah. First of all, I think a very well wrestled match, but one that I
This
felt,
did not need to be 2 out of 3 falls.
one that I felt was largely met with apathy in comparison to the rest of this show. You know, when you're talking about 2 Rumble matches with Mania stakes involved, and a Cody Rhodes Kevin Owens ladder match that's been built up for months now, having this match really does like show you the gulf between the tag division and the rest of this company. The choice to have it be 2 out of 3 falls was also interesting because I think, well, how long was the match in total?
Oh, that's a good question. Actually, I don't have the time in front of me. I'll look it up.
What do we think? Like, what, 15?
15, I would say,
15-ish?
in that neighborhood.
So, I mean, ultimately became like sort of like the length of a standard, match, for instance. But still interesting because I think given all the time in between, you could have added another match on the show to maybe increase the amount of star power that might have been there. This was just a strange choice because, again, the tag division, even as beloved as a DIY might be to the online crowd,
that was the purpose of this match. Like, this match had to be like just go out and have a killer 14-minute tag match, which is how long it went. And if you're arguing stars, then yeah, Rhea Ripley should have been in the spot just having a 10-minute match with somebody.
These days, like, you can have both. You can have star power and you can have great like in-ring quality, right? This just felt so much more like a TV feud and a TV program to me, and
a very unsatisfying finish.
The booking was very uncreative and lacking in just interest, and unfortunately by the end it kind of showed you the state of the SmackDown tag division, where they're giving them a lot of airtime. They're letting them do a whole lot of like storytelling with like Pretty Deadly and DIY and like Legato, but none of it is really catching. None of it is really all that interesting, especially in comparison to the greater, interest level that the WWE seems to be providing. So the Profits I continue to just be very perplexed by with this current run. Yes, like, I guess, like, they we're supposed to see them as, if they're not heels, then they're at least a more serious version of themselves. So they've taken away like the cups, they've taken away like the style of promo that Ford used to do, but they haven't found the next thing to make them equally as interesting. So unfortunately, they've just kind of come across as, at best, generic, at worst, confusing because of their sort of ambiguous like tweener status, where they're attacking both baby faces and heels all the time, so you never really know how you're supposed to feel about them.
They showed highlights of Pat McAfee playing for the Indianapolis Colts, and then we saw Ron Simmons, Rick Steiner. They didn't give him a live mic or any thoughts on the current political landscape. Rob Van Dam, Bilal Muhammad, and John Mellencamp. And I'll just say this, John Mellencamp got a way bigger reaction than the UFC welterweight champion did.
Of course.
Yeah.
He's a bigger star.
Yeah, but I mean, he was showcased here, and I guess Rick Steiner back in good graces here. We comfortable putting him on television.
He was on before.
Has he been since the whole incident from 2 years ago?
I'm pretty sure he has. Yeah.
Cody Rhodes against Kevin Owens was the ladder match for the Undisputed WWE Championship. Cody Rhodes sliding under the ladder. I would never want to be for a guy that has had inopportune injuries, but I guess bad luck is only a figment of one's imagination. So after we spent this whole segment last week, Wai, hanging these title belts up, Kevin steals his belt back on Friday, and Cody walks down to the ring wearing his title belt.
Right. Yeah.
And then they rehung them. What was the point of this ceremony last week? They both took their belts back.
An excuse for a segment on NBC.
What was the addendum?
I don't know, dude. Like an
addendum is a change to a previously agreed upon contract.
They did not call it an addendum on Saturday night's main event. At that point, it just became contract signing. So at some point, something changed there.
Okay, well, all that to say, we had 70,000 people here on their feet as the bell rang, and Cody is slammed through this ladder support early on, and I just noticed in the background, you can see the broadcast area, and Michael Cole is standing for the whole time calling this match. And all I'll say is that as they're setting these record-setting gates, whoever was right behind him probably dropped no less than like a comfortable 4 figures on these tickets. And I don't care who you are or if you're calling this match, I'd be like, sit the F down, Michael Cole. He's blocking these people right in the front row. He's just standing there during the body of the match.
I mean, I do wonder if they're just comps for those sections.
I don't care. It's like, drive me nuts. Have someone standing in front of you. I don't care where you're seated. That would be just drive me insane.
Anyway. Well, I don't recommend buying those tickets then.
We got your money, sir. So there's a mini ladder brought into the ring, and Owens gets rid of this. The crowd boos, so Cody brings it back. And they would make their way through the crowd, eventually making it back to the ring. And, man, they didn't do just tons of big ladder spots. Instead, they chose big, painful looking ones to really just be embedded in your memory from this match. We see one where, first of all, they have a discussion where Wade says, we talk a lot about physiques here in WWE. Kevin Owens has the perfect physique for absorbing punishment. Pat says, yeah, he's calloused. I mean, let's just tiptoe around the fact he's heavy. That's what they're trying to say. The man is heavy.
Sure.
Yes, that was what they were trying to say. They compared him to Mick Foley, but they were not going to say heavy or overweight or anything like that. But he's got a perfect physique for absorbing punishment. The ladder rung gets ripped off by Cody, and Owens just blasts him in the head with this. And we have a sideways ladder in the middle of the ring. Cody back body drops Kevin Owens onto this ladder. Now, we're going to see this Alabama slam spot that I'm sure will be the one that is replayed to death, and it's the big visual attached to this match. This back body drop onto this ladder. They showed a replay of this. This ladder may as well have been super glued to this mat because there was no budge in this ladder. It was just a man's spine coming down on the top of this ladder and just like, and it looked like just the most painful thing I could imagine happening to one person's back. This is the moment I'm going to remember from this match. And if one day I am at Cauliflower Alley Club in 2055 and there is Kevin Owens and he's getting around with a cane or something, I'm going to go and just say, do you remember that bump at the 2025 Royal Rumble? And you know what he's going to say? Boy, do I.
And you'll ask him if he regrets it, and he'll probably say no, not at all.
He's gonna tell me what his payoff was that year, what his tax returns were, and be like, you know what, fair trade off.
I guess when you've established like doing these sort of spots routinely for far fewer people, that's in matches that are being seen by far less people than the 67,000 that were in attendance and however many millions that might have been watching at home. Yeah, like he probably thought it was worthwhile.
So we continue the match. Owens stops a superplex and does a fisherman off the turnbuckle through the ladder, prompting Nick Aldis and the other producers to come and check on both. And also Sami Zayn appears, and he's showing concern for both. And the match resumes. Cody stops a stunner to hit the crossroads and starts going crazy, ramming Owens' head into the desk, into the post, busting open Owens. And Zayn is looking on as Rhodes just goes after the wound with punches. Owens hits a low blow on top of the desk and teases the package pile driver, which is where Cody counters it into an Alabama slam off the desk, crushing Kevin Owens through this ladder that just contorts along with Kevin Owens' body as he is just left for dead in this visual that if they were still in the business of putting out DVDs, this would be the cover. And with that, Cody rolls into the ring, climbs up, and grabs both championships while Sami Zayn is kind of watching from the floor. And this one goes 25 minutes and 5 seconds. And afterwards, like, Kevin Owens is like barely conscious. And there is Sami Zayn. And Cody is leaving, comes back, and gets onto the desk and holds up the belts. And Zayn just looks up at him, and it was just this subtle, like, you are an asshole in this moment type of vibe that I got here. I thought this was really well done. If this is to lead to Sami Zayn having an issue with Cody Rhodes, that you won the match, you destroyed him, but then you had to dance on his grave too. And this is my best friend. I just thought if this is where this is going at some point, masterful job here. This was my match of the show. As much as the Rumble was booked so well, I thought this was like really, really well done. And I love kind of the end that they had here.
I could see it for Chamber. You know, I think we've all expected a big match for Sami Zayn for a Canadian stadium show. Him going up against a Cody Rhodes challenging for the championship, I think would be excellent. But even if it's not, even if it's just like laying the foundation for a future campaign, I think there'd be a lot of potential. You know, it's clear that they're planting the seeds for Sami in more ways than one. We've already seen the interactions between Sami and Cody on Raw, you know, having that awkward interaction. That's a clear direction that they're going to be having. But we also have, coming off of the Rumble match, like Sami and Jay, you know, potentially having issues. So they're making Sami a focal point, and they're teasing the heel turn very strongly right now, with this match probably being like the most clear tease of it that we've had so far. I thought it was a very good ladder match with great crowd engagement, gave you several satisfying big spots here, and required Cody ultimately to get into a meaner side of himself, which is somewhat ironic, you know, because it required him to break the neck of Kevin Owens in order to match the guy who is known for breaking people's necks. So I thought that Alabama Slam honestly couldn't have looked better because Owens landing was like, on impact, I think relatively safe, okay, if you're watching it slowly. But after the landing, his neck getting caught in between the two rungs of the ladder as he's just like rolled over like that, it provided just this excellent visual concluding with Rhodes standing tall and Owens like having this like awesome bloodied face on the ground. So,
this is just like neck bridges in the New Japan Dojo. This is just, you know, warm up.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, coming out of this, we have a very clear direction with Sami Zayn and Cody Rhodes, but a masterful job by Kevin Owens and Cody Rhodes in this entire buildup over the past, what felt like half a year or something.
And you can certainly come out of this with the same, like Owens and Zayn. What is keeping these two together is this plan to headline WrestleMania, and now they're going to switch spots where it's Zayn going for the title and Owens enters the chamber. Like, you could certainly do that as one of the many possibilities going into Toronto to come out of with. So I like that direction if that's where they're going. I think they set it up really well if it is. And then the announcement just out of nowhere of WWE Evolve is going to launch on Tubi on March 5th, airing Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. An open time slot for wrestling fans.
Wednesday night at 8?
Yeah.
The fact that it's Tubi, I think probably more so suggests like you'll watch it whenever you watch it. You know, I don't think this is meant to be a competition or anything, but now getting onto another streaming platform, it feels like it's in spirit, maybe the sort of next version of Level Up, you know, like featuring like sort of talent that I don't even know what you would necessarily classify them
This
as.
is also going to be airing in conjunction with LFG on top of it, which is a similar concept, although this feels more like this is going to be straight matches as opposed to like a reality show storyline development that LFG will have, like a reality show deal.
Yeah. And I think we're starting to see more and more this sort of ecosystem that the WWE has crafted for themselves. There's the main roster, and there's NXT, which has really kind of ascended almost to become more than just developmental. It's sort of like it's sort of like the main roster of developmental, if that makes any sense. And then your true developmental are things like LFG and now Evolve. And then maybe below that, to even make it onto Evolve, you just have to be, you know, like a competent NIL or a WWE ID athlete. Well, I would classify ID even below that in terms of just like the ecosystem. So yeah, very interesting. Interesting that they essentially are keeping original Evolve branding from the original promotion.
And then Tyrese Halliburton, he made it. They beat the Hawks, and there he was. He made it into the crowd, as did Kai Cenat, who was their influencer that did not have as big of a presence on this show as his contemporary.
He was streaming his reaction, I think, for almost the entire show, at least like when I
in the
checked.
crowd.
In the crowd, I believe, yeah.
Okay.
So live streaming from there, that must have been really annoying to sit next to, you know, if he was...
Because iShowSpeed was backstage for the whole thing. He had like well over 100,000 people like watching his stream.
Cenat, when I checked right before the Rumble match, had about 100,000 live viewers.
Okay,
and
so I think this was a great idea for these two. And
they're across two different platforms.
Yeah.
Cenat was on Twitch and iShowSpeed was on YouTube. So you're hitting both of them that way. iShowSpeed, when the Rumble started, was at about 125,000. By the time he had a spot, it was up to 200,000. Live viewers.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So Joe Tessitore and Big E are in the studio. This was odd. We had them in the studio and there was like no audio. All you could hear was like the in stadium audio bleeding through. And rather than cut away, they just let them go for like 2 minutes like this. It was such a non-WWE like technical error that just should have just cut from this. This was just bad.
It was. This coupled with like the whole Spanish commentary fiasco. I mean, it's been a few glaring issues, but you know, I always have sympathy for like producers when it comes to this because I just know how complex these productions can be. But yeah, a bit strange that they didn't cut away.
Into the Men's Royal Rumble we go, and kicking things off is Rey Mysterio, and number 2 is Penta, who saw Charlotte's entrance and said, "Hold my beer." Because this guy came out, this was like the third Royal Rumble was Penta's entrance here. This man, he was not rushing through this at all. He was like, I'm soaking in every second of this walk to the ring, and he did.
Listen, he's been maybe like the biggest thing, at least on the Raw side of things, you know?
No, not just Raw or SmackDown. As Michael Cole said, the man taking the world by storm.
The entire world. Okay. All right, fine. But he's been incredibly hot, and I think like having him, he might have been instructed to take his time with this, but he was also entering before the match actually began, which is different than Charlotte.
After that that promo he did on night 1, I don't know if his instructions are take your time. I think they know the man will definitely take his time.
Oh, okay.
So they shake hands, and then he gives the zero fear sign, and Ray yells out 619, and we just get into things right away. And man, we get some elimination teases, and Penta is sent over the top with a head scissors, and it looks like his feet hit the floor. And I went back. I think it was just one that touched.
I don't. I think
I tried to watch this. I don't know if that left one hit. It could have, but it was really hard to tell.
The fact that we never saw a replay on air suggests that they at least in production probably thought it was ambiguous enough that they didn't even want to entertain it.
Well, then the question becomes: was he the longest participant in the Rumble or the shortest?
That's a great debate. But clearly it was way closer than they ever intended.
This wasn't The Rock eliminating himself in 2000 when he was supposed to win the Rumble, like where it was just like flat on, and they built a story coming out of the match where it was just so clear his feet touched the bottom.
I say he touched. John says he doesn't. What do you think?
All right, go on to our Twitch stream or Cricket 5G and let us know. I really like the start of this because Chad Gable is in third, and he's only a week into the voodoo arts of lucha under Dominic, and he is entering with the luchadors, and that would be followed by Carmelo Hayes, Santos Escobar. So we are getting, first of all, Carmelo Hayes had this look on his face like he was so excited to do like a sequence with Ray, and immediately Carmelo hits La Mystica onto Penta, and Santos Escobar hits Rey with a 619. Then Penta goes after him. Santos hits him with the Mexican Destroyer before Rey hits a 619, and then everyone skins the cat and go after Chad Gable. So Gable was just like overwhelmed here by the luchadors and I guess the lucha influence in Carmelo Hayes as well. Otis comes out sixth, not a luchador, and he gets into it with Chad Gable. Gable gives him a German, and then seventh in his retrofit of his father's is Braun Breaker coming out, and this guy was not taking his time getting to the ring. He just runs down and boom, spears Carmelo Hayes, tosses him out. Breakensteiner onto Gable, suplexes Otis, then he tosses Santos Escobar out. So we're getting some eliminations from Braun Breaker. We think the eighth entrant is Akira Tozawa, but as he is walking out, Akira Tozawa gets nailed by Carmelo Hayes on his way to the back, and they've got to make a judgment call. They bring him to the back. Paul Levesque needs a replacement, and he calls on I Show Speed, who is right there in Gorilla, and comes out and gets a pretty damn good pop coming out here. And he runs in, and he helps Braun Breaker eliminate Otis. And then he does a backflip, and Braun runs the ropes, and he speared this guy so hard before he military presses him onto Otis, who catches him on the floor and just throws him overhead onto the desk, and I Show Speed is out. When they showed the replay of this spear to I Show Speed, rather than coming at him straight, he came at him at like this angle, and I'm not going to diagnose this guy having a concussion, but if he does, I will not be surprised in the least, because the way his head came down here, this was like one of the nastier spears that I've seen taken in a long time, because his head, dude, bounced off the mat like a basketball.
Yeah. So listen,
like I'd be stunned if he was not concussed from this.
Odd conversation to have now, just given like the whole discussion about JD McDonough and whether or not we should be celebrating somebody's toughness. But I have to imagine like that was part of maybe what I Show Speed's thinking was. Maybe they suggested the spot to him. Hey, do you want to take a spear from Braun Breaker? And he's like, oh man, that sounds really tough. But you know what? I'm going to do it. And I'm sure he's getting like high fives from the people in the back for like, being able to take a spot like that. But there is the question of whether or not it's reckless to perform something like this to somebody who's certainly not trained for it. There's a certain level of athleticism clearly that he's shown, that he has. But man,
like he took an RKO last year at Mania.
Did this backflip. But man, to take like this sort of spear from Braun Breaker, it was tough. He did get up, or at least like he did continue like on his stream afterwards. Like, by the way, this whole thing was streamed.
Yeah. Like that was the purpose of it.
So they carted him out of a golf cart afterwards, and he was like selling and like saying, I'm never coming back to the WWE. So he was still like in character and kind of like playing the gimmick at that point, which I hope is an indication that he's okay.
Hopefully he's all right. I thought the idea was great. Doing the spear spot. I mean, it looked really nasty looking the way his head hit the mat here. So hopefully he's okay. I mean,
yeah, I thought it was a great interaction of a celebrity, again, provided that, the man's okay.
Ninth out is Sheamus. So of course him and Braun get into it. 10th is Jimmy Uso. This stat blew my mind away. This was Jimmy Uso's third career Royal Rumble. This guy has been on the main roster for almost 15 years. How is this his third Royal Rumble match?
I feel like Jay has a similar stat. And
they said Jay, it was his fourth. So it's like these guys have just not been booked in Rumble matches for most of their tenure on the roster.
They're tag team wrestlers. I mean, not that should prevent them, but yeah, interesting.
I mean, there have been some thin years. Like, anyway. Andrade is out 11th. They note he returned in last year's Royal Rumble, and what a return it's been this past year. Jacob Fatu is 12th, and I mean, there's a lot of focus on Penta in this match, but to me, if there was a guy that, I mean, we will talk about, levels of elevation, and yeah, he was not the winner, but I thought Jacob Fatu, I mean, this guy just continues to...
One of the stars of this.
Yeah, I thought he came in, he faces off with Penta.
Did you like Michael Cole's nickname for him?
What did he call him?
The Lupin-like Fatu.
Jesus Christ. That's brutal.
He had to have been laughing, like that's like calling the facial.
Listen, I'll say this for Michael Cole. The guy's having the time of his life right now, and if any man is owed it, it's Michael Cole. The man has paid his dues to be able to just be on to have
call Jacob Fatu the Lupin-like Fatu.
This is a guy who got yelled at. Don't call him Ray. So he lifts up Penta and Ray for a double Samoan drop. Then he throws out Gable and he throws out our number one entrant, Ray, who lasted almost 25 minutes. Then he eliminates Andrade. And then we get a tease of Braun Breaker and Jacob Fatu as they are locking eyes. Ludwig Kaiser is out 13th. Michael Cole imagines, what if Kaiser wins and chooses Gunther? Yes, what if? What if? Kaiser does pretty much the comedy routine. He delays entering the ring. When he finally does, Penta sends him out almost instantly. They do clarify that Santino's was still quicker in 1 second, but Ludwig Kaiser getting the in and out bushwhacker treatment.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, like, I don't know if I'm necessarily surprised. Like, I feel like it's almost better to have a spot like this than to just kind of be in it and to be forgotten completely, because this at least might give some reason for a potential Kaiser versus Penta feud, or at least match, to come.
14th is The Miz, and then number 15, big pop for Joe Hendry, who comes out winning the TNA Championship, and this was a This was a whole, just two different worlds existing, because moments before this, we had a graphic up of who had made the most Royal Rumble appearances. And there in the top 3 listed is Dolph Ziggler. But then when describing who he beat the title for, Michael Cole notes he just beat Nick Nemeth for that championship. So in canon, we have 2 separate individuals.
Sure. Yes. Wrestling is funny.
He hits the standing ovation onto Miz, and then Sheamus gets into Fatu's face because he was enjoying Joe Hendry's act and says, "Why are you getting so angry?" And then 16th, here to just clean out the trash, is Roman Reigns, who comes in. He is just delivering spears all over the place, throws out Miz, throws out Sheamus, and then manages to spear Joe Hendry and tosses him out. So there's our levels to this, and there goes Joe Hendry.
Very much so. I mean, Jordynne Grace appeared as Knockouts champion, and I thought like sort of had the opposite effect, where she was being taken very seriously. The Joe Hendry character, despite being TNA champion, in contrast to like a Roman Reigns or Jacob Fatu, is very clearly more comedic and not as seriously taken.
Yeah. Reigns and Braun have a stare down, and Braun gets to catch Reigns with a spear as Heyman is stunned, and then he goes to throw Reigns out, but there's a reversal and Reigns throws Braun out. So they at least gave Braun the spear spot here.
And I wonder if this is like, I mean, obviously all of these interactions are a potential, tease of matches to come, but like Braun and Roman certainly received a great reaction.
And the Braun Heyman combination that they teased in NXT, which I certainly see as something potentially down the road that you could definitely see, through some iteration of Heyman. So we continue, and we have Reigns and Fatu sharing the ring, as Cole calls this a future WrestleMania main event.
The fact that they called it that makes me wonder if, it might be speculated that like this is the match that Roman might have at Mania, but the fact that they specifically, or he specifically said future WrestleMania main event, maybe hints towards this not being a direction this year.
Yeah, I mean, this to me is a Saudi Arabia WrestleMania main event. I mean, that's what
right.
Cole meant.
Yes.
Drew McIntyre is 17th, as him and Seth were the big talkers in this match. It began with you, it's going to end with you, as he confronts Roman Reigns. Penta just sitting in the corner. He's just kind of chilling out. Finn Balor was 18th. Not one person knew of the new Judgment Day theme, which international viewers got a sneak peek of on Monday. 19th is the Great Kabuki, Shinsuke Nakamura, as Cole remarks that the pace in this match has gone down since the Luchadors have left. I mean, what an indictment of your Roman Reigns, who's been in here for like 5 minutes. And the pace has gone down. And then we see Penta up the pace with a Mexican destroyer coming off Balor's back onto Jacob Fatu, which was his swan song, because then Balor eliminated Penta. And Penta lasted just over 42 minutes or just under 2 minutes, depending on your interpretation. So quite the debate there. And so Penta got the Iron Man award, lasting the longest. 20th is Jey Uso. And man, Nakamura just ran at Jey Uso, missed him, and ended up on the floor. I don't know if the TNA champion or the United States champion was positioned lower here, but this Nakamura was just, a one note nothing.
It's been a strange run, a really non-existent run since he's won the championship. He hasn't really done anything of note.
21, the returning AJ Styles, who has been out since the beginning of October, so he got a big response.
His old team returning.
Oh, yeah, you're right. I didn't even put that together. Number 22 is Braun Strowman, who, Wolverine here, who made a complete recovery from last week's attack on Saturday night's main event where he was bludgeoned to death. Back to full strength in a week.
Yeah, interesting.
Guess Braun's not allowed to sell unless it's in the moment.
Yeah, interesting.
It was very odd because that was like a heavy beatdown angle that they did.
Well, it seems like they're continuing the program with
They definitely are, because he lifted and eliminated Jacob Fatu, and Fatu lost his mind, threw the chair at him, and Braun was telling him, "You should have killed me." So maybe they'll have a to the death match. 23, John Cena, who comes out the walking billboard. I mean, from head to toe, hat, shirt, jorts, wristbands, socks, and they have a John Cena's Farewell in Indianapolis Funko Pop also on sale. I mean, NASCAR has nothing on this John Cena farewell run.
Oh, he is like a NASCAR himself with the amount of sponsorships. I'm sure that'll come his way. But I mean, this is what you, I think, would expect. You're trying to maximize, this property that you have. He comes out here saying, telling Stu that this is his last Rumble. So there's just
I bet Stu knew that.
A tinge of sentimentality attached to every single appearance. And you know what? I bought in. I thought this was a really nice little entry here.
Well, out he comes, and I mean, in your head, all the big names that are to come that they're kind of saving for this final 10, and they really try to maximize this. So he comes in, Strowman just runs at Cena, and Cena just does the high-low and pulls down the rope. Braun's out. Look kind of foolish here. And then catches Finn. AA sends Balor out, and Reigns spears Drew, and we get the face-off with Reigns and Cena. But the clock counts down. CM Punk is next. So the entire period here is CM Punk walking down, entering the ring, and just standing with Cena and Roman until the clock begins again. Like, no one touches during this period, and the crowd was in for it. Like, they were loving all this. Rollins is 25th, and he breaks up the monotony by just charging at Punk, and we get a big brawl involving everyone here as the stars are piling up. Number 26, Dominic Mysterio, who I thought was great in this match. He comes out, and he's just got like the smug look on his face, like, of course I can follow these last couple of entrances. And he hits a frog splash onto John Cena, tries for the Three Amigos onto Roman, and Cole is just calling this guy the modern day moron and just running him down. 27th is Sami Zayn, who comes in, haluva kick to Drew, and then after all this drama on Raw, just straight up nails Rollins with a haluva kick.
Well, they said it's everybody for themselves.
So on Monday, it's like this treacherous "did you turn on me" drama, and on Saturday, it's okay, cool, it's no problem.
Well, this is the confines of a match.
Wouldn't you rather take it on Raw rather than in this match where this match is at stake for WrestleMania? So anyway, 28th is Damian Priest. So he ends up eliminating Dominic after stopping a 619. 29th is LA Knight as him and Jay go at it with a Yeet versus Yeah battle. And Jay misses Drew McIntyre and accidentally super kicks Sami Zayn out. So I think this is all contributing to Sami Zayn and his friends that are like Kevin Owens is the guy that has my back, and you're building up all this angst within Sami Zayn. So I kind of like where all this is going with Sami. And the 30th entrant, Logan Paul. So in he comes, and so we've got a lot of people in the ring at this point. Damian Priest just sends Drew McIntyre out, like very nondescript elimination, I thought, overall for Drew McIntyre, although the two did like share a look afterward, so we'll see if there's follow-up there. Paul is on the edge with LA Knight trying to eliminate him, and Paul leaps to the desk and drinks a prime, goes onto the barricade, and then leaps to the steps, which was the point in the match where I realized no Kofi Kingston in the Rumble.
No.
So they didn't use him. So Logan Paul is back onto the apron, and Styles is not paying attention to him. So Styles goes for a phenomenal forearm, and Logan Paul trips him, and Styles crashes to the floor. And would seem to indicate something with AJ and Logan Paul.
Yeah, you would think.
Knight then clotheslines Priest out, and Styles. Before Styles had eliminated LA Knight, before Logan Paul did the elimination on AJ. And then we go into all of these big spots where there's a GTS to Logan, a pedigree on Jay, Superman punch to Cena, and they lead to everyone down except for Reigns and Rollins. And they do the very slow turn, have your back, you turn. I think the layout of this match, they thought this was going to just tear the place down for all of this lead up to Reigns and Rollins. And I've got to say the reaction it wasn't nothing, but I can't imagine it was what they were expecting. Like, I thought they thought this was just going to be insane, this reaction. And to me, it was a reaction, but I didn't think it was like anything special to it, that it felt like they had built this match toward these two finally going at it. And they did. And Cole explains how they're, first we get a series of super kicks by Rollins, and Reigns lifts Rollins, has him over the top when CM Punk appears, and we get the Flair dumping out Hogan and Sid spot where Punk eliminates both Rollins and Reigns, and Cole explains that it was their hatred that cost them the match. And then out of nowhere, Logan Paul throws out CM Punk, which was a part I liked because it was that little zinger on SmackDown that we had CM Punk mention to Kevin Owens, like, you lost to Logan, like mocking him. And just if like that was there with the knowledge of doing something here, like, just, I hope like there was a thought there, because obviously the person that eliminates CM Punk, it should be strategic in who you picked, and they went with Logan Paul.
There's thought put into everything, I'm sure. Yeah.
I think so too. So yeah, you have Punk out, who is probably most people's presumed pick. So you kind of had the surprise of Punk being eliminated, along with Reigns and Rollins, and we are down to Jey Uso and John Cena, but not after Reigns gets stomped onto the steps and Rollins just loses it. He's brawling with Punk. Punk says something to Heyman before leaving, and so Reigns is kind of left for dead after this, and we just get into Cena and Jey, and I will just say this, John Cena, he is a massive, massive star, and I think he is exceptionally, I think he's very strategic with what he is able to do and get the most out of it, because he seems to be like very mechanical and slow, but the audience is super into him, and that is going to be, I think, the key to his matches, is just build things to the key moments. But like, just watching this and envisioning like a 20-minute WrestleMania match, like that's going to take a lot right there, was my thought.
I don't know if Cena's ever made his name, though, for being like a spectacular active wrestler. To me, he's always been more successful because of his crowd work. And I think this will only rely a lot more on his storytelling, his promo ability, and his crowd work and his pacing in order to deliver satisfying matches, of which I think he's still very capable of.
Well, he's got like the aura and working to the crowd. Like, he's got that aspect in droves.
It'd be another thing if like he was, I don't know, like a Kurt Angle, who kind of made his career off of having spectacular matches. But Cena, I think could still beat John Cena,
Yeah, it's it will certainly be interesting based on this ending and where things go from this. But we get teases. Cena does the 5-knuckle shuffle, but Jey comes back with a spear, and then it culminates with both on the edge of the apron. There's a super kick, and Cena's holding on with one hand on the rope, but then lifts up Jey for the AA. Jey drops into the ring, and he just pushes Cena off the edge. Just a real simple elimination that I thought was great. And you have Cena with the stunned look on his face. 80 minutes and 10 seconds, Jey Uso, the surprising winner of the Royal Rumble. Cena comes back, hugs Jey, puts him over, and then they did a big yeet with the whole stadium, which was a great, finish to the show, doing that with the entire 67,000 people. And yes, it is Jey Uso that is your Royal Rumble winner.
I thought it was a very, very surprising ending to this Royal Rumble. When they put Jey in the final two, I thought, okay, I didn't think anybody could buy Jay beating John Cena. You know, Cena's a heavily rumored winner heading into like he's the one you could picture in a WrestleMania main event. Jay is somebody maybe in the future, if they play their cards right, you can picture in that role, but not this year. Certainly not ahead of like a CM Punk or others, right? So I thought, okay, like I don't buy Jay winning at all, but I thought it was like a nice little bone that they were throwing him, you know, to just have him be able to say I lasted towards the very end of the Rumble. So I'm like, okay, good booking here. But they ended up having Jay win. And I'm about as jaded of a fan as many, but this like totally surprised. Yeah, this totally caught me off guard. And I thought this underdog win is by far like the biggest, I think, vote of confidence that they've ever given to somebody of his position. Like somebody like a Bryan Danielson, I thought was already like he was the expected choice, I feel, of like certainly whichever year he ended up winning. Did he?
He didn't win the Rumble.
Okay, well, whatever. Like
but the year they went with him. Yeah,
I feel Jay is sort of like on that cusp, but like I didn't think he would have this moment for at least another year. But the fact that they pushed him into the spot ahead of potentially a CM Punk or you know a Roman Reigns or whatever, I thought it was awesome. You know, it's a brilliant decision. Now I do expect the match, the outcome to be like Jay versus Gunther, and at that point, you ask if that's the match. Is that truly the main event of WrestleMania? Whatever they put on last is technically the main event, and I don't think it's a huge risk to put that match on last because people are already through the door. I think people will care about Jay enough, and I think they're going to, at the very least, put a lot of steam behind a Jey Uso campaign towards WrestleMania. So I love the surprise ending. I actually really enjoyed the entirety of this Royal Rumble, especially once you had all the main players in. You had the storyline attachment to everybody's motivations. And I thought they played with all of those really well. You know, gave you a lot of really big potential matchups here. Like just to name some of them, you know, Braun Breaker versus Roman Reigns is something that they tease. Fatu and Reigns, of course. Rollins and Reigns, which I almost see like being maybe one of our biggest candidates for a Mania program between the two. Punk and Reigns continues to get built up here, of course, with that elimination. Logan and Punk, Logan and AJ Styles. In the immediate future, Braun Strowman versus Jacob Fatu reignited after that elimination. On a smaller scale, Penta versus Kaiser, Penta versus Finn Balor, who eliminated him. So a lot of great work done in this entire Rumble.
I love the booking of Jay. I really like the idea of just let's just put everything on this guy who's clearly gotten super over, massive merch mover, and it was something fresh, something new, and here it is. Like you could have gone with a safe, reliable pick, and instead I think it adds a lot of interest for the March pay-per-view, and you know it's just putting all your stock in somebody to build and really, really elevate. So I like that quite a bit. We are going to circle back to more of your feedback afterwards. This also coming out of the press conference was John Cena showed up at the press conference, did not, and this is from Andrew Thompson, by the way. He didn't take any questions. He just said he wanted to make a statement. He said his comeback was set to be a tour of goodwill and thought that was best for business. He said it just dawned on him that what's best for business is him winning a 17th world title and main eventing WrestleMania. He declared for the Elimination Chamber match and said he'll give his opponents in the match 1 month to slander his name while he films a movie in Hungary. So appears Cena would be off TV until March 1st and in the Elimination Chamber. But that is not the part of the press conference we are going to be talking about. And joining us now to talk about the Paul Levesque portion and any other notable events coming out of the press conference is Brandon Thurston, who joins us now. And Brandon, we got we got the amended complaint on Friday. Was not expecting it to drop after 10 p.m. Eastern time, but that was when 101 pages dropped, and
yes,
as did everything I'm sure you were doing at that particular time on a Friday.
I was waiting and waiting, and I went to bed, and I said I'm going to have to get out of bed at some point, I think, and I did.
So before we get to the press conference, I mean, we talked a bit about it last night, but it was at a point where we hadn't even gotten to go through all the 101 pages. For people that have not been able to go through it, what would you say were the new things that were learned in the amended complaint that would have maybe jumped out, the couple of things that they went into more detail regarding?
Generally, I would say that these were a lot of minor details that were added to attempt to fortify the argument that Janel Grant was sex trafficked and that the arbitration clause should not stand. The thing that I think that will jump out to wrestling fans the most, though, is that Michael Hayes is mentioned here as somebody who Vince McMahon instructed, allegedly, Janel Grant to send a photo, not to Michael Hayes directly, but to Vince for sharing with Michael Hayes and the writing team. A photo which is described in the amended complaint as customized pornographic content. That's the biggest revelation, you could say. In addition to that, we have now the names of the various individuals whose names will be familiar to wrestling fans. By and large, those names which were previously anonymized behind various pseudonyms, those names have been spelled out. And those include Brock Lesnar, who allegedly Vince was trafficking sexual encounters with Janel Grant to Brock Lesnar as part of talent renegotiations. We also have the 4 WWE corporate officers who are not accused of abuse, but are accused of enabling Vince and having awareness of the relationship. And those include Nick Khan, who's, of course, still with the WWE, Brad Blum, the former general counsel, Brian Nurse. I'm not sure what's going on with Stephanie McMahon, and I have asked who is corporate officer number 3. Her name was included in the original complaint in some portions where they're referring to her public statements, but they seem to have actually replaced her name. So I'm not sure if that's an error or not. In any case, Ann Callis, who's the attorney for Janel Grant, has confirmed all 4 of the names and has confirmed that is Stephanie McMahon who's being referred to in those cases. Additionally, we do have Rich Herring, the Warrior Award recipient, who is involved in government relations for WWE, worked for WWE for decades. He is also named as somebody who's previously referred to as WWE employee number 1. He is not accused of abuse, but he's someone who is characterized as very influential and very feared. I believe he's compared to Jerry McDevitt as the only person who's more feared as Jerry McDevitt at one point. And we have Dr. Carlin Kolker, for people who've been following this case, and especially while it was on hold over the summer. Vince McMahon allegedly sent Janel Grant to get treatments at Dr. Kolker's clinic called Peak Wellness, where she was given allegedly various substances and prescriptions, and she wasn't told what she was being given. Grant has made it clear that she is reserving the right to potentially add him as a defendant, and they would be joining WWE, Vince McMahon, and John Laurinaitis. So she may, in the future, add Kolker and the clinic itself. Those are the big headlines. But do you guys have any others that jump out to you here?
I guess it's worth talking about. I guess, like, they did include the blueprints of the WWE office where Janel Grant's office was situated, where she shared a wall with Paul Levesque, and that there was a door that was attached to John Laurinaitis' office. And
yes,
I mean, the wording in this is that both Brad Blum and Nick Khan were involved in the planning of Laurinaitis' custom suite where Ms. Grant would ultimately be exploited. Now, you can read into that whatever you will. They're obviously implying something here, that this was you are left to interpret like what they are trying to get at here, but they're giving you a physical description of how close Janel Grant was in proximity to John Laurinaitis, to the point that her office shared a door with his office.
And to be clear, it's in that office that Grant alleges that she was sexually assaulted by both Laurinaitis and Vince McMahon on an occasion. And she also alleges that she was instructed to go to Laurinaitis' office, and Laurinaitis would instruct her to perform oral sex on him. And she's pointing out that this is a room, this is an office that was sharing a wall with Triple H's Paul Levesque's office. And I was just looking at this before I came on air here, and it is, you can see where it does say Triple H, Paul Levesque, and it does say here's Laurinaitis' office, and here's the EA for Laurinaitis, and it says Grant. So that's what it's showing there in that diagram.
Brandon, what's been some of the response you've been seeing from maybe the greater public? Because, a lot of these things, I suppose, are still allegations, but I think what could be a very real consequence is just their effects on maybe the wrestling consuming audience. Have you felt like there's been much response so far?
I try not to read much of the response way. I think there's people who are following this. I would like to think that there's a lot of adults who are interested in this case and are following it, and who are, I think they add all these facts together, especially considering Vince's history, where he has various allegations, not just from Janel Grant, but from 6 other women who accuse him of various kinds of sexual misconduct over the decades. And I think this is a big story, and I think regardless of what anybody thinks of it, I think it's, as a reporter, I think it is one of the biggest stories in wrestling history, given we're talking about the most powerful, I think bar none, uncontroversially, the most powerful person in the history of pro wrestling, allegedly sex trafficking and sexually assaulting one of his employees.
And I think two of the big takeaways from this, number one, I think that this was certainly a more, like, if you had read the first complaint from a year ago, you're probably not going to be as horrified reading this one, because it's going into further detail. It's also expanding upon a lot of the text messages. And, the key argument here is this NDA, and whether this judge is going to recommend arbitration or that this will be tried in court. And one of the key arguments that they're making, and they include, is like Vince McMahon and how persistent he was on Janel Grant signing this NDA. And they have like the text of the voicemail,
yes,
and stating like, you have my company over a barrel. Like, he is being very forceful in having her sign this. And her argument is that this was signed under duress. And they certainly do have the language that would support that. But ultimately, it's going to be Judge Sarah Russell's, interpretation of this. And that's ultimately going to be the decision here of whether this NDA is held up or thrown out.
Yes. Can we swear on this podcast? Because we have a lot of F words here. We see, he says that, he's describing in this voicemail, and I think it's interesting to learn exactly sort of what the details are that led up to this NDA being signed, and why Vince felt that there was such an urgency to do it, and to do it in short order. This NDA was signed in January 2022, and Vince, in this voicemail, which is transcribed, he's describing this important board of directors meeting that's coming up, and there's something called the audit committee on a board of directors, and you have to apparently tell them whether or not there's any pending litigation that you're involved in, and you're supposed to do this honestly, of course. And he's describing how Jerry McDevitt, the longtime lawyer for Vince McMahon and for WWE, he's describing how Jerry McDevitt is involved in these discussions with the audit committee, and Jerry McDevitt is also working with Vince McMahon to draft and execute this NDA with Janel Grant. So naturally, Jerry McDevitt has knowledge of this NDA that is currently being negotiated some days away from this meeting, where they're going to have to disclose to the board whether there's any pending litigation that you're involved in. So you get sort of this rambling transcript of a voicemail where he says things like, I'm double fucked and stuff like that. He's very urgently, you could say pressure, and I'm sure Grant's side would say pressuring Grant to hurry up and get this signed, because Vince is describing his fear of having to let the board know about this relationship and this NDA that he's working on, this relationship with Grant, and the risk that would bring to his position in the company and to his marriage with Linda McMahon. So this is all important to Grant's argument about doing away with the arbitration clause. And arbitration, for anybody who doesn't know, is where you go to private mediation, where you work with like a retired judge. And this is all out of the public eye, which is, you would think, where WWE and Vince McMahon want this. They want this out of the public eye in private arbitration. It'll get settled there. We won't really know much at all about this process as opposed to public court. And the way that an arbitration clause, which is part of this agreement, ends up being ruled unenforceable is that you have to basically show that one of the parties was under duress, or there was some sort of fraud going on in the process of this agreement, or there might be public policies that that allow the judge to say, no, we shouldn't enforce this. And that's where the Grant side is pointing to things like the Speak Out Act that are supposed to advocate for people who have been victims of sexual assault and sexual harassment in the workplace. So that's part of what they're getting in there. And in a lot of other ways, they're just fortifying their argument about why this arbitration issue in particular should not be enforced, because that is going to be really at the heart of things going forward, as we've already seen the defendants move to try to get this into arbitration. For now, their motions have been put aside, but they're certainly going to refile those. And eventually the judge is going to have to make a decision about whether or not the arbitration agreement stands. And for us, as covering it as a news story, if this goes to arbitration, it's going to be pretty difficult to cover it.
And just citing the language from the amended complaint specific to what kind of spurred on the push to get Janel Grant to sign this NDA. In January 2022, McMahon told Ms. Grant that his wife had found out about their relationship, purportedly to avoid divorce, negative publicity, and other repercussions. And despite the fact that Ms. Grant never expressed a desire to take legal action, McMahon said that Ms. Grant's time at WWE was at an end and that he wanted her to sign an NDA to ensure her silence on, among other things, his personal misconduct. Even after pushing Ms. Grant out of the company and muzzling her with an NDA, McMahon continued efforts to exploit her, including attempting to traffic her to WWE star Brock Lesnar, who would be in New York City for a live event and TV taping in March 2022. And that's important because the NDA was signed on January 28th. And this is a point that Brandon has brought up multiple times, is does that NDA cover for future allegations such as like we know of alleged incidents that occurred after January 28th, and you have
and the NDA itself is an exhibit. Anybody can read it as part of this lawsuit, and the NDA says language to the effect of this covers everything in the past and it doesn't cover anything in the future. So you would think that this is going to be something that's going to at least complicate this case. The fact that she alleges, she doesn't put a date on it, but she does specify that it is after January 28th, 2022, that she alleges that she met Vince McMahon at his apartment and saw him in person for the last time, and she describes in graphic detail how she was sexually assaulted at that time, allegedly.
Yeah, and also what I found to be extremely damning is, like, there is literally a text message of Vince McMahon telling her to go to Greenville, South Carolina, even if it's just to say hi to Brock. I mean, it's really tough to look at this and not see it as plain as day as like what is being instructed here. And I think that, like, if you want to try and poke holes in any of this story, like, there's a lot of enough concrete in this that is demonstrated through the push to sign this NDA, what is alleged, and the conduct of Vince McMahon that has been represented in these text messages. That alone is extremely damning.
And I guess to put the trafficking allegations in some context of what's being alleged, not only does she allege that she was sexually assaulted on numerous occasions by Vince and by John Laurinaitis, but that this was in the context of her working for WWE. And you certainly have various incidents that are described happening right at WWE headquarters. But in addition to that, she's alleging that she was trafficked to John Laurinaitis as part of, you could say, his compensation for working for WWE.
They had a schedule like worked out. Like this was like a routine that she was like following.
She was to meet him at a hotel and so forth. Yeah. And she's alleging that as part of Brock Lesnar's talent contract negotiation, a sexual encounter did not occur, but a sexual encounter was planned, and for various reasons, I believe 3 different times, it didn't end up happening, whether it's for weather or because Brock Lesnar got too drunk at dinner or because of COVID-19 concerns. And she's alleging that there are all these occasions where Vince shared, without her permission, naked pictures of her with other people who are working for WWE, and adding the Michael Hayes story onto it is just another instance to the pile of alleged incidents where he's sharing naked pictures of her with others. And whether or not these people know that this woman is an employee of WWE, certainly Vince does, and it's being framed in such a way that this was part of why he was employing her. That's the Grant perspective.
So roughly 24 hours after the amended complaint is sent out, Pollock goes in front of the media tonight after the Royal Rumble, and Wai and I, obviously, we have not seen any of the press conference. Was any of
You didn't
this
miss much.
Was any of this brought up in any way, shape, or form?
No, there were 4 questions. None of them had anything to do with the Grant lawsuit or any other controversies. He was asked about the Hall of Fame, and that story. He told that story. He was asked about what stands out about the first event of this Indiana Sports Corporation deal, and how has that gone? How are you? Question number 3 was, how are you looking for this road to WrestleMania, and what are the ramifications for tonight? And finally, question 4 was, have you seen a statistical impact on W's numbers since getting iShow Speed and Kai Sinet? And he talked a little bit about that. There were no questions about this. There were some other business highlights, but I don't know if we want to go to those just yet. And of course, everyone applauded at the end.
So the closest we got was, what are the ramifications of tonight
for WrestleMania? Very, very much a storyline question. No questions. We did our best, John. We put some questions out there on social media for people to reference and read over and think over, but no questions whatsoever related to this, which is not that surprising.
Well, it's, to me, I feel that this complaint, I mean, it will really gauge what the level of coverage that this receives does generate. This was actually a comical moment where
yes.
Paul announced over 70,000 people, and the graphic undersold Paul's total by like 5,000 people.
Yes. He said 70,347. And yes, as you said, there's the graphic, and Wai is showing it on the screen. 65,470. WrestleTix is right in between those at last count, 67,590. So I don't know if they were not including the suites in one of these numbers or what was going on there. But we have some information about the gate, and at one point on commentary, Michael Cole said that this was the 3rd biggest gate in WWE history. Paul Levesque reiterated that. You've got to do the decoding here, and you've got to have some WrestleNomics articles handy to figure out what this really means. It looks like this did well over $17 million is what I derive from what he's saying. He's saying that this was the 3rd biggest WWE gate ever, bar none, and only WrestleMania Saturday and Sunday of last year were ahead of it. Those were in the neighborhood of $17 and $18 million each. So therefore, it has to be greater than the $17.3 million, including ticket fees, for WrestleMania 32 in 2016. So greater than $17.3 million is what he's saying here. And I believe the lesser of the 2 nights last year was 17.7 for Saturday. So I guess we could say and that's without fees. So I figure it's a little bit more it could be 18 with fees. So it's in the range somewhere of maybe the high 17 million, that mark.
Yeah. And it really does, set things for Las Vegas, which, I mean, I just feel those are going to be number 1 and 2.
Probably have already surpassed that, if I were to guess, just based on where they are at the moment, given what we've seen for the ticket sales. I was just looking earlier tonight, $340 is the cheapest ticket that you can currently buy for either individual night of WrestleMania.
Well, if every seat was filled and this was in fact sold out, was this a disappointing event for Mark Shapiro?
I don't think so. I'm sure he's thrilled.
They hate when they sell out. They realize that means we didn't price tickets high enough.
Right. You need to price it because and that makes sense from a supply and demand. Don't tell people online that, but it's just supply and demand. If you've got a high demand, if you're really popular, then you can charge higher ticket prices. I suppose the only potential criticism of that strategy, though, is that, well, maybe if there's a day where you're not as popular as you are now, and you go back to these towns and try to charge them, if you try to sell an event, that you might not be able to draw the same fans back if they feel disgruntled about higher ticket prices.
We'll let you go in a minute, Brandon. I know it is late, but Wade, do you have any thought? Did you think that this would be addressed at the press conference?
I thought there'd be a very good chance, John, just by what precedent has been set, by how fresh the story is in comparison to even last time. Like, we're talking about less than 24 hours. Mm-hmm. So yeah, a little bit surprised. Again, I haven't seen the press conference itself to know maybe what the pacing of it was for. I mean, feels like somewhat less than maybe what he usually takes, or maybe around the number that he usually
sometimes
takes.
He'll say, "Give me another one." I mean, 4 is pretty normal, I would say. It would, and minimum, but normal. I think, and it was a year ago, and I was there in Tampa for the Royal Rumble a year ago. Just what was it at that point, 2 or 3 days after the Grant lawsuit had been filed, and I think that was sort of an earth-shattering moment for wrestling news. That was a big moment, and for better or worse, this just isn't as big onto the consciousness of wrestling fans, and I suppose therefore for the people in the room. And I believe there were 5 questions at that press conference a year ago. 3 of them were about the lawsuit or something to that effect. 2 were not. So I just, quite frankly, I don't have a lot of faith in the people in the room to ask questions. I think WWE has done a fascinating job in, rewarding people and making people feel like they're part of something fascinating and exciting. And I think it dissuades critical media and critical thought towards their policies, towards their controversies and their scandals. So I don't think that there's much incentive. What do you gain from it? I tell you what you don't gain. You get people quite possibly harassing you online in large numbers if you do that, as John and I have experienced. So it's not that surprising. And we're seeing trends like this, I think, in the larger world, but I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. I mean, I can't say I'm stunned by it, but like comparing it to a year ago, like, yes, WWE was named as a defendant a year ago, but it was very much like so much, especially in the immediate, so much of it was on Vince, and he resigns, and it's, what are you going to do to handle this? And this year, like when you looked at the amended complaint coupled with the reporting from The Athletic and New York Times about leaf fitting, this is becoming more of a WWE culture issue, that it does, like the idea of just, the cancer has been removed. And yet there is, I think, still an overall absence of an understanding of like what kind of culture are we allowing and who are we at ease in bringing in and what safeguards are also in place. Like those all remain open-ended questions. And I think in this amended complaint, you're certainly seeing the idea that this, like WWE has been a defendant from day one, and there's a reason that they have attached WWE to this, and they have done quite a masterful job of isolating this to be the problem is gone. And if you're bringing this up at a WWE event, it's like you're souring the party essentially.
Yeah. And I would suggest along the lines of culture, Nick Khan is not accused of any abuse. He's accused of knowing about the relationship, and he's accused of being part of the neglect that the company is being accused of. But Nick Khan comes from the sports media world, where he was a very successful and influential agent, and it was the agent to numerous names that like Stephen A. Smith and Kirk Herbstreit and a lot more. Tom Rinaldi, whose voice you heard tonight on Royal Rumble, and the sports media world has its own culture problems that I would suggest, his association and perhaps his tolerance for it. This is someone who hired Jamie Horowitz to be an EVP at WWE shortly after he came to WWE. Jamie Horowitz is someone who was fired from Fox after allegations of sexual harassment. Nick Khan has now hired Lee Fitting, someone who was fired from ESPN after allegations of sexual harassment. It raises questions about what kind of culture do you trust Nick Khan to oversee in WWE, given it's not a deal breaker, at least for him to hire people like Jamie Horowitz and to hire somebody like Lee Fitting about a year ago, even despite the fact that you just went through a long and painful process of investigating the various allegations of misconduct against Vince and others of the company and its own culture issues. So these are complicated questions, and unfortunately, I don't expect most of the media to have the audacity to ask Pollock about them.
Well, coming up this Wednesday, it will be the audacity of Pollock and Thurston, 1 p.m. Eastern time. And if you can't wait until Wednesday, patreon.com/WrestleNomics. And you can also catch Brandon's story up on postwrestling.com, where he goes through the whole amended complaint and isolates the most significant revelations and further information that we learned on Friday. And I'm sure we will be following up on this in a big way coming up this Wednesday. So, Brandon, thank you very much for staying up late, watching the press conference, and joining us.
No problem. Thanks for having me. See you guys later.
Thank you, Brandon.
Before we get out of here, Wai, we are. Do you have any final thoughts, Wai? Anything else you wanted to touch upon on that subject before we move on? It's a bit of a awkward shift.
I hope we continue to get discussion and reactions to this thing. I mean, I feel like it's at risk of just kind of dying, and without any sort of resolution, I think that would be a really sad ending to all of this. So I hope people continue to ask questions of the people that deserve to be questioned. So that's all I hope for.
All right, let's go to forum.postwrestling.com. We'll go through a couple of these and just look at some of people's thoughts on the Rumble. We start off with Stig from the UK. He says, the women's Rumble was good, but fizzled out towards the end. And once Nia did the big elimination, it was just a matter of time until Charlotte won as the only realistic choice left. Tag match was decent, but felt out of place on a card, especially as it only lasted 15 minutes. Ladder match was fantastic. Just perfect escalation with some proper nasty bumps. Men's Rumble was brilliant. The best one I can remember in years. It was so stacked with talent, full of stories and fun surprises. Highlights were Joe Hendry, Braun Breaker, and Jacob Fatu, and Roman getting to the ring quicker than he ever has in the last 5 years. It was a long run to go. Once Punk was gone, I thought it was telegraphed that Cena would win, but how wrong was I? Well done, WWE, on the surprise winner, and congrats to Jey Uso.
Let's go up next to Jeremy in Texas, who says, as predictable as the women's Rumble was with Charlotte winning, the men's Rumble turned out to be unpredictable. All those main event stars in the match, and they go with Jey Uso. The entrance is an experience. Yeet has become a great catchphrase, and not to take away from the accomplishment, but I would be surprised to see his title match go on last unless there are others involved. Cody or Gunther versus Jey Uso doesn't seem like a final destination in my opinion. Maybe they add the mix of Roman, Punk, and Rollins, and maybe that's a match by itself. Certainly. And we're also talking about...
I think this has definitely put a lot more focus on Gunther if they are going to stay with him, because he, to me, is like the big win for Jey Uso is Gunther. And like it almost feels like any other opponent would seem to be like you're basically starting from scratch, which you could do, but Gunther is kind of, you've already done.
They've already established the feud.
You've done it like that. Yeah. He needs that win. So I think I'm much more on board with like that direction now. And it certainly was not one I was seeing coming into this weekend.
And again, what they end the night with is only important if they worry that the crowd will either leave or give a poor reaction to that match. And I don't see that happening if they decided to put Jey versus Gunther last. Let's remember, to me, one of my favorite WrestleMania main events was Sasha Banks versus Bianca Belair. And that build to that one was absolutely shitty. There's really nothing there at all. But yet, the circumstance surrounding that particular match and the ending of the night was certainly enough, to keep people captivated and to have us talk about it in retrospect as one of the great main events of WrestleMania history. So, I don't think there's a big risk to having Jey Uso versus Gunther take place on a card and have it end the show. Not in this era.
Brian from New Jersey writes, amazing men's Rumble. I thought it was really well laid out and put the star power to great use. Had some surprising moments, especially the winner. What a trajectory for Jey Uso from last year's WrestleMania to this year's. I take it Rollins is fully heel now. We're getting Rollins versus Reigns at Mania and Logan Paul versus either Punk or Styles. Just spitballing. Women's Rumble had its moments, but the more crowded the ring got, the more women who came in got lost in the shuffle. Heck of a ladder match. Big violent spectacle.
Yeah, perhaps just as interesting, other than the winner of the Rumble, is all the many directions that they've established for all of these top guys like CM Punk and Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns. Just in that little interaction alone, they were teasing interactions with potential matches with everybody. Not to mention a Jacob Fatu or a Logan Paul that might get in the mix with some of these guys as well. So the possibilities are just still wide open coming off of this Rumble.
And you'll probably get Punk and Cena in the chamber together.
Yeah,
you would think.
Let's go to Jermaine, who says, the Rumble was good, but this Hunter is a brilliant booker, has to stop. His women's division as a whole is subpar, and when he finally puts a tag team match on a big show. It's crickets. It's because of Hunter. Now let's get to the Jey Uso Rumble, being the Rumble winner. Trash. The man just lost clean to Gunther, and who is thirsty for a Cody versus Jey match? I hate to say it, but Vince books Mania better than Hunter. Jey Uso is nothing but Warrior 2.0, just an entrance. In-ring means less and less these days in the WWE, and the standard keeps dropping. Boo. Good night.
He's moving on from Roman. He has found a new target. No, I don't see Jey and Cody as the direction at all. Like I don't see that one at all. It's Gunther, and I see that is the story, is the fact that this guy has had his number and looks at him as a joke. So
the fact that we have two technical main events allows one of those main events to be given to the Rumble winner. That's not necessarily going to be the flagship match that you promote for this year's WrestleMania. That's the match Cody will be involved in. You know, Chris from LA would argue Cody's in the real main event. Jey will be in the technical main event.
Yeah. I mean, listen, what they're doing with Jey, it like, I'm not even going to say like whether it works or doesn't work. Like, he's already of a certain level. The goal is, can we get him to an even higher level? And here's a guy that is, he's got this insane catchphrase that's just taken off. It's a merch machine. They customize for every sports team in the city that they go to this. And they're just like, can we ride this even hotter? Like, he's a really, he is that level of character that has a crossover appeal that they are just going to try and ride and see like how far they can go with this. I appreciate like the ambition of just trying to go all the way with someone who is very unexpected and is someone fresh in that top mix, rather than going with what easily would have been like a Punk win would have been a very safe choice, would have got a great reaction, sets up the big match. And they went a different direction, and we can look in hindsight and see if it was the right call come post-Mania, if this was the start of something, and yes, he can hang at this level or not. But I appreciate you're taking the risk to do it, and you have probably a good idea of the key matches in your Mania lineups that will probably become known coming out of this.
And you're giving reason for all of your top guys who didn't win the Rumble to enter the Chamber match as well.
Yeah, like you could have a Chamber with Cena, Punk, and Reigns right there as three people, and that's a pretty loaded match to have to try and recreate that kind of final 10 minutes that you had of the Rumble tonight. Rollins in there as well. Like, there's all these ways you can go.
Paul, like, you know, or Drew, whatever, like Jacob, for instance. Yeah.
Let's go to Jordan from the Bronx. I mainly watch WWE PLEs and rely on your reviews of the TV shows to fill in. So a lot of these entrances for the Rumble were met with mehness in my house due to, hey, listen, these songs were met with meh by these 67,000 people. A lot of the participants in both the Rumbles are only on pay-per-view once a year, and a lot of other people's songs have changed into generic tracks. It's telling when the crowd who is there were also silent for many entrances and only came up for people that they recognized as stars. I completely agree with Jordan, and that was a takeaway I had on this show, was like, the music is an issue because it's not, there are some people that you can just say, yeah, they are not stars to the audience, but there are like mid-card level people that I think people, like, it's just totally unidentifiable themes that they have, and it's hearing 60 theme songs in one night that was a takeaway for me.
Yeah. It's one of the issues, especially with a women's mid card, that's there. To me, like the majority of the issue though is just their inability to really create a great supporting cast.
This is not just strictly the change the music and that, right. Like we've gone over the problems in the lead up to this women's Rumble, like, and especially this year where you had an exceptionally deep one in the men's match, and that you can both credit Paul Levesque on the one side, but also look at the women's side, and it was very lacking coming into this show.
Let's go up next to Nick, who says, awesome Rumble matches. Alexa Bliss, what a really big, I think he mistyped here. Jordan Grace, also Joe Hendry. What matches do you guys see for Alexa now that she's back? I would love to see her have matches with Liv, Candice, Alba, basically the entire roster. Nick wants to see. Also, the announcers never mentioned that Andrade is Charlotte Flair's husband. I don't know why they would have needed to. I mean, it's sort of common knowledge and also kind of irrelevant, just given that particular moment in the match. I mean, I see Liv as the immediate direction, just given like who they had to eliminate Alexa Bliss. And I think that would be incredibly fresh and a great way to kind of like push Liv back into the spotlight after, a very successful Rhea Ripley run. To have Alexa be that next top level babyface for her to challenge, I think would be awesome.
Yeah. And let's remember too, like they probably are not done of flipping people back and forth on Raw and SmackDown. So just because Liv is on Raw now, like Alexa could end up on SmackDown. Like there's all these different ways, and I think you just slot people where they're best suited and not be so rigid, especially in the lead up to Mania. You don't need to have these distinct borders. Matt writes, Rumble was great. I've been battling a flu fever all day, so I may have been a bit loopy, but why does it seem like Jacob Fatu will not attack Sheamus?
Yeah, that was a little odd. I'm thinking that was just a little bit mistimed. They kind of shared a moment where like Fatu was attacking Joe Hendry and Sheamus was like, "Why did you attack him? Hey, I want to fight you." And they just ended up standing there for a long time. I think they were probably just waiting for like the next entrant to come out before actually engaging.
He also has a comment here about Bryce Mitchell and my 2 cents on Bryce Mitchell. He's primarily supposed to be a fighter and doesn't seem to be very good at that based on it. To be fair, Bryce Mitchell, he's not like a championship level fighter. He's a very good fighter. I mean, if we're just being fair here. Why in the world do I care about his thoughts on anything else? He can't even do his actual job well. The saddest thing is I think he knows that and acts the way he does to keep some degrees of notoriety. Okay, well, Bryce Mitchell, he did put out an apology today, but it certainly does not, to me, erase the awful statements that he made this past week. And I think that there is going to be, there will be a lot of backlash against Bryce Mitchell. Sadly, there will also be supporters of his because of this as well. And that's kind of a sad reality too.
Let's go to Andrew from Cape Breton, who says, so I mostly caught the 2 Rumble matches as I paid more attention to the first hour of Collision. The women's Rumble was fine, but didn't have that much excitement. It actually reminded me more of the 91 Rumble than any of the recent ones. Good to see Alexa Black. Not so good with WWE bragging about people falling for their planted story. Okay. I mean, I think all that's fair. Like it's fine. The men's Rumble was better. It's great to see Joe Hendry got that reaction, but we got a good taste of what his WWE TNA relationship will be with Hendry getting thrown out quickly by the real star. It was a big surprise. I mean, again, you can also look at like Jordan Grace from last year as a counter to that, like who they gave a great run to. I don't know. I think if you're TNA, you're probably happy that there is a relationship, period, you know. It was a big surprise to see Jey Uso win. It's something good that WWE has been doing. They're going with the hot hand. He's over, and instead of letting people down by having him fail one time and time again, he looks to be succeeding. His biggest issue is his wrestling compared to the other stars in the match, and hopefully he can overcome that.
Go to Annie, who writes, excellent show, like just about everything. I was in the fetal position throughout the ladder match. Some of those bumps are brutal. Hope Cody and Kevin came out of it okay. Jackie referenced Cody carrying injuries. Hope it's a work. Love the men's Rumble, and that was a bold choice. They've set up so many hooks for the TV between Punk, Reigns, Rollins, and how KO and Sammy unfolds. Old man Cena story playing out, and where Braun and Fatu go, and the Orton return, I think is what he meant. World-class booking. So that's the counter argument. Is it going to be Punk, Reigns, Rollins in a 3-way?
Possible.
I don't like
for a Mania match. I always hate. I 3-ways turn out well, but like the builds to them, I'm never as big of a fan of. You know, just for storytelling. But I don't discount it. Let's go to Sourplave, who says, when I wrote in last year's review, I thought that last year's Women's Rumble was the best one that they've had. This one blew that one out of the water. I'm excited to think that they could create a Charlotte versus Rhea Ripley 2 for 2 reasons. Number one, being able to have their match in front of a crowd, and with Rhea Ripley being the Rhea Ripley she is today. Yeah, just on that note, like who do you see Charlotte picking?
They did the match. I know the one happened in Tampa the year, or it was supposed to be in
COVID.
Tampa, and that was the year at the Performance Center. But then they had the one in California 2 years ago as well. Okay. So they did have one in front of fans.
So this will be number 3.
This would be the 3rd.
Yeah. But was that Mania though?
Yes.
It was. Okay.
At 38.
So what do you see for this year, for Charlotte for this year's Mania?
I don't dismiss that as an option. Like that's a match you could certainly go back to and do a second time. Like Rhea's a significantly bigger star than 2 years ago. And I think it all depends. If you like, the audience is going to be behind Rhea in that scenario. So if you're going into this with the idea of Charlotte being a babyface, that's not going to hold against Ripley. You can go with the fresh match with Tiffany, unless there's like a third option out there of something where, but I think that the Stratton match could be where you see it going.
Let's go to, he continues. This was on pace to being the best Royal Rumble show as a whole ever until the end. I don't think that this was the right night to pull out that kind of surprise. The way this build-up was stacked and the magnitude of the surprise makes this feel more like an outsider win than a dark horse win. Maybe this was their way of carrying that stackiness, for lack of a better word, into the Elimination Chamber, while getting their Instagram story and YouTube Shorts video out of 80,000 people yeeting along. I was sitting and thinking that it would be fun to say that 2 people won 3 Royal Rumbles and thinking that the show was a 10 out of 10, and then it became an 8 out of 10 show. Super grateful for the live broadcast experience I had with the luxury of sharing it with, well, more of a brother than a friend.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, time will tell. I guess, some are into the Jey Uso idea, some are not, but it's going to determine if it feels like a big match. Like, if, to the point, like, if this is where, he is, if it's not one of the top matches at WrestleMania, then it doesn't really do you a whole lot of good, I think, coming out of it. Like, you don't want to water this down where this Rumble win is just for what is really to the audience just, your 4th or 5th match in terms of importance on the 2 nights. It needs to feel like something big, or else they're not going to view Jey Uso as anything bigger than before. So, let's go to Muggin here with the last one. Charlotte winning was telegraphed for weeks. The Women's Rumble was entertaining with the likes of Julia, Stephanie Vaquera, and Roxanne Perez making a big splash. Jordynne Grace is going to fit in fine. Kevin Owens is a madman for taking an Alabama slam through a ladder. DIY and Motor City Machine Guns was good for what it was. The Men's Rumble ripped with 3 Ps. It had the level of unpredictability that the Women's Rumble didn't reach. So many stories have spawned from it. Cena's road to 17 got a lot bumpier. Rollins and Reigns' hatred for one another has drawn in Punk into their riptide and a shocking ending, with WrestleMania main event Jey Uso pulling it off. Probably the best one since '92. Coming to theaters this April.
The best one in 33 years.
I don't know. That was it. I think overall, a satisfying Rumble for most. It seemed like the general feedback was positive.
Yeah, I loved it personally. Both of them.
Yeah. So sets up a very big Raw for Monday. As I'm sure this should be their biggest Raw since the Netflix debut. I would think there will be a lot. I think we could go the full 3 on Monday potentially.
And we'll be here to chat about it live in the Post Wrestling Cafe on Monday nights, especially for our extended editions of our Rewind of Raw review, including news of the day, feedback, and timestamps. I'm told that for many of you guys, having timestamp segments on these podcasts now is sort of like one of the big perks of being a patron. So you get those every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday night with all of our reviews. Those of you listening on our free feeds, whether it be on YouTube or our podcast feeds, we'll continue to get the show reviews by the morning or sometime after we record. So however you choose to consume our stuff, whether it be free or within the Post Wrestling Cafe, we thank you for your time. Please like and subscribe.
Go to postwrestlingcafe.com now and become a patron saint of Post Wrestling. We want to thank Brandon Thurston for joining us, all of you for staying up late with us. I don't know what it says about WWE going 4.5 hours for 4 matches or us going 2 hours and 10 minutes to review 4 matches. But hey, it's
you had a whole lawsuit to discuss as well.
We also had that as well. All right, that's going to wrap things up. We're back Monday night. Join us then, and we'll speak with you on the post-Raw edition of Rewind to Raw. Goodbye.